I'm Jeff Blindford from KTBS3, KTBS Podcasting, and Committee of 100 present Good to Know Shreveport Bossier, a podcast series showcasing the good things happening in our area. Go now and listen to our discussion. You talked about your daughter. You mentioned that she was dyslexic, and you started a school in Baton Rouge called, I believe, the Key Academy, and you're getting ready to, launch another such school in Caddo Parish. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Louisiana Key Academy, this is our 10th year in Baton Rouge. It's just for students with dyslexia. We have a second school that started this August in St. Tammany in Covington, Louisiana. And the plan is to open the third school next August in Caddo to serve Caddo and the surrounding parishes.
That's great. Do you have a particular site picked out for that school at this point?
Well, we have been working with the local school district there. There is a school that is vacant right now on Arthur Circle. We have visited the school. In fact, I'm going to visit it again this week. It's early in the negotiations, but it's a lovely school, a lovely site. So we're optimistic that will work out.
And in doing a little bit of the reading, I guess I was surprised that, and I think it was a quote from you that said as many as 1 in 5 kids in the United States could be affected with dyslexia. That kind of shocked me. I had no idea.
Right. Dyslexia is very common. Now, just like most medical entities, it can be mild, it could be moderate, or it could be severe. And it happens to be very common. And if it's moderate to severe, we know that there are incredible consequences. And we see this in the data, nationwide data, when 50% of Blacks and Hispanics read below basic and 30% of whites read below basic. So it's really, once you start thinking about it and looking at the numbers, it's something that's unfortunately below the radar, but valid.
Well, go ahead.
Well, when it seems like I hear about dyslexia more and more often. It seems to be, I don't know if it's more common, but it's more diagnosed. Could you tell us a little bit more about what is dyslexia? I always just thought, well, they get their I's and their E's backwards, or they get some letters backwards. What is it even about? So can you kind of explain the seriousness and the challenges with dyslexia?
Sure. And thank you for the question, because people say that a lot. And I think that's part of the problem. I don't think it's more common now. I do think because of social media, parents are talking more about it. So basically, it is an unexpected difficulty in reading. And it's unexpected because these kids have average to above average IQs. And the problem with the reading is what we call the phonological processing, which is just a long word. But it basically is when you take the word cat, and it's k-at. It has 3 sounds. And what we have to do as humans is we have to match the spoken word, which we pick up pretty naturally, to the written word. And that's where the dyslexics have problems. And it's seen again in the problems with reading, writing, and even speaking, and certainly spelling. Once they're identified, which ideally would be at the end of kindergarten, then it's just giving them the specific instruction. And again, they're average to above average IQ. They're contributing members of society if we can identify them and give them what they need to learn how to read and write. If not, they're smart enough to be in the class. They're frustrated. A lot of them will drop out in middle school or high school, and we know there's an increased rate of incarceration. But again, it's not because they're have a bad bent or that they're not smart. It's just because they're not being identified and they're frustrated.
And that's I understand that you need to get to these kids early. You need to get to them by 1st grade. If you wait to 5th grade, that's too late, right?
Well, it's not too late, but unfortunately, in Baton Rouge, we've been there for 9 years. Our smallest class is still the 1st grade. We have a huge influx of kids in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and we take those children. It makes it much more difficult, and their self-esteem has been really battered for several years. So it is not ideal. they can still be successful, but you got a much steeper hill.
I think one of the biggest challenges, as I think about it now, is from the little that I understand about it, the challenges in reading can be so embarrassing for these kids. So if we think about what's the necessity of having an opportunity to identify these kids, now with the prevalence of bullying becoming so much more prevalent and so much more vicious, these kids, if they're in school and they begin to get left behind, they can't read, they're embarrassed, they're frustrated with school, they don't know why, from what I understand, they begin to get bullied, so it becomes more of a compounding effect to drive them out of school and to drive them into a situation that can be avoided if we can diagnose this and help them. They can actually be excellent overachievers. There's so many famous people, Einstein, Steve Jobs, these people that are the most brilliant people in our history were dyslexic. Somehow they overcame it, but I would imagine that's the exception, not the norm.
Well, I do tell people it's a workforce issue because again, obviously you've got people like Einstein who didn't really speak till he was 5 or 6 and was always a poor reader, but obviously Einstein's the exception for any group. But I think that what we're trying to focus on is helping the teachers understand what dyslexia is. So instead of saying, John, Mary, whatever your name is, read out loud, and then they're incredibly embarrassed because they get anxious as well, that they know something about dyslexia and they can help toward that identification process. And then the school is really to help kids with moderate to severe dyslexia, as well as the community, so they can see a best practice model.
Talk to us about the testing process. My understanding is that is really an expensive thing to go through, and I guess that's why a lot of kids go undiagnosed.
Right. Well, so if you go to a psychologist, it depends where you live, but it can cost anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000.
Whoa.
California, sorry about California again, it's $10,000.
Oh.
Here in Louisiana, I think it's more $1,500 to $2,000, but that's out of the ballpark of most parents.
Right.
What our school does is for those that appear to most likely be dyslexic and they want to come to our school, we do that testing for free. We worked recently with Webster Parish. There's a screener that we recommend. They use that screener in Webster Parish. They screened their kids, their kindergarten, first and second graders, but then they're like, well, we don't really know how to test. So a group of 6 of us went up there for 3 days and we tested all of their students that were at risk for dyslexia. So it's possible for us to do this for districts, but what we really want to do is teach them how to do it themselves.
Sure. And I want to go back to well, you mentioned the teachers and the teaching aspect of it. How hard is it for a teacher just to get a handle on this, and how they have to work differently with the dyslexic kids?
Yeah, so we passed a bill in the legislature this past year, which mandates in 2024 that the universities and colleges, the public universities and colleges, will have to start, they teach to the students that are in the field of education, they take 9 hours of reading. 3 of those hours will be about dyslexia. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's a huge first start. So we're very excited about that. Then if a teacher, once they graduate from college, they're interested in becoming what we call an academic language therapist or a practitioner, they can be trained for an additional year to 2 years. And that there's a lot of these people in Texas. There's a group in Mississippi. We have been doing this now in Louisiana for the last 5 years. We're behind, but we're catching up. So that is the way. It's to give the teachers in the classroom, through their university training, a basic, broad understanding of what dyslexia is so they can identify these children because it is so common. And then for those that want to really teach these kids, an extra year to 2 years to become the experts.
So, Dr. Cassidy, why is it more advantageous to create a whole school than to go into the existing schools and create programs within those schools?
Well, the short answer and the easy answer is change is hard. And the larger the institution, the harder change is. So the charter school route was the fastest and easiest, which it hasn't been either fast, neither fast nor easy. To help people, because when I started talking to people, they're like, look, you have to show this to people. They're not going to believe you. You can, I thought, oh, I can show you this article from the Journal of Pediatrics and everything's going to work out. Well, that's just not the way it is. So I would strongly encourage to start the school. And again, think of it as, again, a best practice place, but it's also a place where teachers can come and train. It is a training ground.
Right.
And the other thing is, because there's so many, we take it to scale. That helps with the economics of it, because that's the other concern I think that the districts have, is how expensive is this going to be. So my answer would be, well, look at the cost long term. The state has to look at the cost long term, right? If they're not in our workforce,
Yeah.
and if they're incarcerated. But second, if you look at schools like ours where we take it to scale, that gives you a way to maximize resources without breaking the budget. That said, we are working with several different parishes, and we'll work with the parishes wherever they are. But what I find is the more that we work with teachers, especially, and those that are in the classrooms, they want more, because most teachers want to help their kids. They just aren't equipped for these children with dyslexia. So I hope this is the start of a long process that really helps all these children, because the reality is, if you have money, you're going to have your child tutored after school, or you're going to send your child to a private school specific for these for dyslexia, and they're going to be successful. And my vision is that really we want all these kids to be successful, and so the LKA model is a way to get to that.
Well, I think this is great, and you mentioned the money, and money is the root of everything, I guess. And you and your husband were, both as doctors, were obviously in a position where you could help your daughter out. And most parents just simply aren't there, are they?
Right. So we're, Kate, our daughter, didn't go to the school. She would have, and it would have saved us a lot of money, but it wasn't available. And for me, it was so hard. And again, the doctors I work with at Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity, the Shawitzes, they were able to help me understand it from a medical perspective and then in the classroom. And it was because of that Kate, she's now in the university studying, and will have a great life. And I saw the trajectory that she could have gone, and I'm thankful for the trajectory she's on. And I just feel like that's what most parents want for their kids.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I guess I was surprised to hear you say that these reading problems at such an early age lead to things like incarceration at a later age. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, we published a study in the Journal of Corrections this past fall. We went to Hunt Prison here in Baton Rouge, and we screened and tested. And it was interesting talking to the inmates. I thought that most of them would have dropped out in high school. A lot actually dropped out in middle school. And when you talk to them, they will tell you that it was pretty apparent, either their parents or they understood in first and second grade that there was a problem. Because again, this is when the skills of reading are taking off. They're being the oral language skills and the alphabetic principle. That's pre-K and kindergarten, and then in first and second grade, you're really solidifying those skills. And these kids are bright, so they're like, I am getting left behind, and it is year after year. If you do that, you're like, well, school is not really a place for me. And they're not happy, and they feel like a failure. So I think that leads to a lot of foul play on the streets and dropout of the schools.
Have you had any obstacles, or I guess tell us about the obstacles that you've had in trying to get together a school for Caddo Parish?
Well, the Caddo community has been wonderful. We've had a lot of people that have come down to the school that are supporting us in Caddo Parish, and including Superintendent Gorey has been very helpful in Caddo. So, it couldn't have been better. It couldn't have been better. We got a long way to go. I think our biggest thing is to help people understand what dyslexia is. We'll try to be out in the community doing some screening for free, trying to help people understand what it is. We've got to recruit teachers. We've got to start training teachers. But I cannot tell you how nice and welcoming Caddo has been. So we're actually so pleased to be coming.
That's great.
That is exciting. So what would a parent do if they suspect if their child has some learning difficulties? What can they do if they don't have $10,000 or $1,500? Is there any steps they can take, or any resources to help determine whether their children are dyslexic?
Yeah, so our website is Louisiana Key Academy. This book, Overcoming Dyslexia, this is by Dr. Sally Shaywitz, who I talked about. It is a great resource, and their website is Yale Center for Dyslexia and Creativity. And we have a chapter in her book. They really believe our model school is the model, but her book gives parents great advice on what to do. And I strongly recommend that parents buy that book. You might not understand it all. Some of it might be too complicated, the science part, but there's a lot that is very understandable that will help you and your child, so that you can assure your child that you're assured that your child has incredible potential, that it's a process. It can be very hard, especially if the child has moderate to severe dyslexia. But our child has severe dyslexia. And like I said, she is in college. And so it's getting that knowledge, partnering with others, and just being persistent.
What was that like for your daughter early on, and for you and your husband early on, when like our daughter just isn't getting school? Did you figure it out earlier, or were you just worried about her? What was that like for her in school?
So
and for you as a family?
Yeah, there were signs, and I think this is why I'm such an advocate. She one of the signs is she spoke later. At 2, she was really behind in her oral language. She went to the speech therapist. I was told that you couldn't identify dyslexia till the 3rd grade, and it sounded so awful. I was like, I don't know if I want to anyway. She had a hard time remembering the alphabet. Like, they might know the alphabet one day, and it's not just saying the alphabet, it's also matching the sounds to the A is ah, B is b. And so it was very discouraging, because you're like, and my friends would say, well, she's smart. We can tell she's smart. It'll come. Well, it didn't come. And it gives the child and the parents incredible anxiety. And then it's upon the parents to really help the child as much as possible if they're not getting it in the schools. And so, and again, they're frustrated, and their frustration, depending on their gender and their personality, they may. Girls tend to be quieter about it, although our daughter kicked the principal in, I think, the first grade.
Maybe I was dyslexic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the boys can act up, right? They can be the comedians. You hear that a lot, or they can get into trouble. And so, again, that's why that early identification is so important, and the assurance to the parents and to the child that, you may fail a few tests. You may have to work. You are going to have to work harder, but this is what your future looks like. And just stay the path, and then have that support that you need.
Well, speaking of support, talk to us a little bit about the support you get from your husband, Dr. Senator Bill Cassidy.
Yeah, my husband's been great. He has introduced and been an advocate for dyslexia on the federal scene for many years. There is a bill that he has introduced. It has some bipartisan support. It still has a long way to go, but it would right now, this is all sort of education wonky stuff, but dyslexia is under what's called SLD in the special ed legislation, specific learning disorder, which is a little of an oxymoron because it's not specific. But the hope is that we can pull dyslexia out so it's its own category, so that it encourages people to be identified. There's a lot of reticence among people to be identified sometimes because they're afraid that, people won't think I'm smart. And that's why it's so important for people to understand that reading has nothing to do with intelligence. And so dyslexics are smart. So if we can take that shame away, get the students identified so they can be successful. And also that just because you're poor, that a lot of kids that are in poverty, the teachers are like, well, they can't read because they're from a poor family. They don't have vocabulary. Yeah. But that's not true. They may have a limited vocabulary, which you can teach, but they can learn to read. And so there's a lot of dyslexics from poor families. So we don't want people saying, oh, you're from a poor family, that's why you can't read, end of story.
Well, that brings up an interesting point to me, is what is the how do people get into the charter school? What area will you draw from, and who all is eligible to go to the school?
So we're going to start small in 1st through 4th grade. The draw is basically anybody that wants to drive to us, which is obviously will be in Caddo, but that could be DeSoto, could be Bossier, it could be Webster Parish, any of the areas where, and believe me, there will be moms that drive quite a way to get to the school. Mm-hmm. And we'll start in 1st through 4th, and then we'll add a grade a year till we're 1st through 8th grade, and then we'll assess from there.
Okay. How about the kids themselves? How do they take to this? Are they, you said you used the word reticent, are they reticent to want to get involved in this, or do they recognize this as something that's going to be very helpful?
Well, I think that, so the kids that come to our school, the parents all cry at the IEP meetings because, they've either failed a grade or failed a subject, or they're just struggling mightily. And for the kids, I'm sure in the beginning, they're like, okay, here we go again. But the stories that we're told is the kids no longer come home with a stomach ache. They're no longer calling from school like, I need to come home, I don't feel well. They're not spending 3 hours trying to do homework at night, and they're not crying on the way to school in the morning.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think just to bring back the seriousness.
You go ahead.
Go ahead, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. The parents are our biggest referral, which to me is a very positive sign about the school.
And when do you think you'll be up and operating in Caddo?
August 2023.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Oh,
you
nice.
said that before. I'm sorry.
Come on, Jim.
I couldn't remember. I'm getting old, man. August of 2023. I'm sure there's 1,000 details to be worked out between now and then.
Yes. We go to Bessie for final approval October 11th. And assuming that all that goes well, which I think it should, then we'll be up there with the presents and really trying to get everything ready for that August open date.
Is the word getting out that this is going on already? Are people contacting you, or are they trying to figure out how to get their kids into the program?
I have had a little contact, not as much as I'd like, but I do think we're talking about social media now, and I do think that will happen. We're just sort of, I don't want to jump the gun too much. Like I said, we go to Bessie, but now we're at the month's notice. So we plan to be, as soon as we get that approval, October 11th, to then really, make a big push to let parents know.
Well, wait till this podcast comes out. You're going to have to hire some extra phone operators. No, but we really do want to be as much support as we can be, because this is very interesting and exciting, I think, for our area to have this.
Well, it is, and I think it's, wow, it's such so needed. I mean, as I said when we began this, I just had no idea this was so prevalent.
Right. And again, you have some of those academic language therapists up in the Shreveport area. So there are, and you have them in Texas. So you're going to have some parents that know about that. The schools know about it. But I think this just is going to give more resources, more awareness, and hopefully a huge amount of benefits to a lot of kids.
Just curious, will the proximity of the LSU Medical School help you out in any way? Are there resources there that can help your school?
Yes, we've met with LSU Shreveport. We met with the education department, and they're very excited, and I think we will have a partnership with them. In fact, one of them wrote a letter for us for the Bessie board. I haven't really talked to the medical school yet, but I'm hoping so. We have pediatricians in Baton Rouge that rotate through the school. We partner with different hospitals as well, because nurses, we have nurses, and it's a community, like any school, it's a community place. So we're enthusiastic and looking for partners.
Well, listen, with what you're doing with this school and being married to a United States Senator, you have a pretty full life, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. All right. Listen, we do appreciate you being with us. Our time's about up here today. But if anybody wants to get in contact with you, tell us again about your website and how they can reach you.
Probably the best thing to do is just to Google Louisiana Key Academy. And on the website, you'll find a way to either email or you can call, and you can call and they can get you to the right person, or they can get you in touch with me. That's quite easy. So Louisiana Key Academy. And we're looking forward to Caddo and the Caddo area, Shreveport, and I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So thank y'all so much.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We do appreciate it. Dr. Laura Cassidy, our special guest today on Good to Know Shreveport Bossier, getting ready to open a charter school for dyslexic children right around here, and that's going to be a great addition to this community. Thank you, Dr. Cassidy.
Thank y'all.
All righty. And thank you for joining us for this podcast of Good to Know Shreveport Bossier, brought to you by the Committee of 100 and KTBS TV. Remember, tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast. We'll have new content every other Wednesday morning. And for more information, you can check us out at goodtoknowsb.com. Have a great day and continue to make Shreveport Bossier the best it can be.